Hey friends, so one of the things I told myself I would do as I build out this YouTube channel is that I would like to spend about 1 day a week talking about Singapore and Singaporean issues. And there's some funny backstory to this, right? So when I started out online, my blog was local in a non-deliberate way. It was local because most of the people I was talking to day to day were my friends who were people that I knew from around town, right? Singapore is a small island city state, so my countrymen and my fellow citizens are the same people in my city, right? And so I used to tweet in Singlish, right? And now when I'm making these videos, I have in mind the knowledge that most of my audience is fairly international, and so it would feel weird for me to speak Singlish into the camera. It would feel like I'm forcing it. I do speak Singlish quite naturally when I'm talking with other Singaporeans, and I'm not very good at code switching on demand. I do it naturally when I'm talking to someone else. And it will be interesting, I think, for me to record a video with a fellow Singaporean, and then you just can hear how we talk when we are speaking naturally. And anyway, I was scrolling through my Twitter drafts and I found a tweet about Singapore and protests that I didn't send, which is something that I feel like I could talk about. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of protests in Singapore. And again, a qualifier that I have to do for all of my videos about Singapore and anything else is that I'm not a professional, I'm not an academic, I'm not a historian. I haven't even done a lot of research, right? I'm just a guy who lives here, who spent his whole life here, done a bunch of reading here and there from time to time, but I don't remember everything and I forget some details. But I want to represent kind of a thoughtful point of view, and that isn't sort of a heavily. I don't really have a strong political agenda of trying to achieve any particular result. I just kind of broadly want the state of conversation in the country to be better. This is what I've wanted since I was blogging, since I was a teenager, right? When I was 17 and writing about Singapore. And now I'm 30 and I'm making a video about Singapore, and I will be making more frequent videos about Singapore. And it's because I love my country. I love the city that I'm in. I went through a phase where I was kind of grumpy about it, and I think for good reason, and I can get into that separately if necessary. And I've seen more of the world now, and I appreciate what is interesting and good and special and unique about Singapore. And I'm in mixed. I have multiple opinions about that conflict with each other. One is that there's sometimes a meme about like Singaporeans being ungrateful and not appreciative of what makes Singapore great. There is some truth to that, but there's also a thing about when you're born and raised within the context and you don't have the chance or opportunity to kind of experience what it is outside of that, then your experience is going to be your experience. There's a certain funny thing at the end of all things when you really kind of do all the reading and talk to all the people and you get a sense of the broader context. It kind of you start out maybe wanting to do something about things, and then you zoom out and you get a sense of everything, and you're like, things are kind of the way they are for reasons, not necessarily good reasons, but there is a reason why things are the way they are. So periodically Singaporean politicians complain that Singaporeans are not creative or not entrepreneurial or risk-taking, but the culture has been designed to be that way, right? You made us this way. You create, and I say you, I'm talking to the authorities, right? You designed so the earliest generation of Singaporeans, the pioneer generation, they were risk takers because they had to be, because when Singapore dealt with the World War II and the Japanese occupation and independence, like it was a very volatile situation and you needed risks to be taken, and big risks were taken. Changi Airport, Jurong Town Council, all that stuff. And now, like, we've had this continuous kind of steady growth and success. It's like a mixed bag. It's like a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing to have presided over such growth, but then people kind of don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to take risks anymore, and that's kind of dangerous in the long run. And I said I was going to talk about protests. Yeah, so there was a period of time in like pre 1960s, like in the 50s or so, Singapore did have a protest culture. It did have, you can look this up, Lee Kuan Yew has quotes about how the people, the youth protesting in the streets, right, are rambunctious, rambunctious, fuck, I don't know the word. The youth protesting, they get very spirited, and he says that, and sometimes cars get overturned, and he says communists infiltrate those riots or protests. And he says, but the youth must be spirited and they must demand more from their leaders for the sake of progress and all of those things, right? And that has changed. That changed a lot, I would say, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. And I think now things are starting to change, after Lee Kuan Yew has passed. And after social media has allowed the youth to organize and learn about each other, and they're just not scared anymore the way their predecessors were. I was kind of on the cusp. I was like a blogger in an age where a bunch of people were still scared, and people are still scared, I think, to speak up and to say things and to criticize authority. And a lot of people who do end up speaking up, they tend to be, they have certain personalities, right? They're very irreverent. They're very angry. I mean, I don't know how to say it's angry personality. It's a disagreeable personality. They're very willing to speak up for what they think is right, and they will use strong language. And when they do that, they often kind of overstep their they end up making kind of grandiose accusations, which it then becomes relatively easy for the authorities in charge to clamp down on them and accuse them of defamation and all of those things, take them to court. And the thing that I always kind of get annoyed by is the lack of finesse and subtlety and artfulness in criticism. But I could go on the other side and say, well, our artists and critics and all those people don't have those skills because we don't have a scene that allows these people to develop these skills. And some part of me feels like these people are just not ambitious enough or not skilled enough, or it's kind of embarrassing in some way. But I'm just sort of hoping for better, basically. I'll end this here then.